And I personally received letters from family members whose loved ones are suffering from mental illness who describe how difficult it can be to help. One woman wrote me, went on to say about her mother, a retired teacher who has a bipolar disorder. Her daughter wrote, quote, "Too often insurance companies dictate the standard of care when it actually needs to be care providers and family members who have more to say." She went on to say, "Please advocate hard for the most vulnerable among us." Well, that's exactly what my administration is trying to do. Today,
It's official, everybody. President Biden is now approving $40 billion worth of financial relief for almost 1 million Americans. Several state lawmakers are also working together to provide future aid for homeowners and renters. This could be equal to over $2,000, and relief is coming for homeowners. One city, Honolulu, the mayor is actually signing 2 measures into law, and the bill will be signed into law to provide a real property tax credit for homeowners whose property tax exceeds 3% of their income. And the city council said the threshold for eligibility for the credit has not been updated since 2014, and the home exemptions were not updated since 2019, and that it is considered that these modifications be updated on a timely basis. And to qualify for the tax credit, the combined income of all title holders for the property must not exceed $80,000. Also, the amount of property tax after applying the credit is not less than the minimum tax amount required, which is $300 too. Now, when the mayor signed into law, the exemption amounts for $100,000 to $120,000 for homeowners. Even for the state of Idaho, it ended the fiscal year with a surplus budget of $99 million. So, when it combined with the $205 million in funding already earmarked, it's going to be giving $300 million in property tax reductions. Idaho homeowners will see their property tax credit when they receive their property tax bill this November. The amount of property tax reductions people will receive vary based on the county and taxing districts that these homes are located in and the home's assessed valuation. Even Montana's Republican-controlled bill directed hundreds of millions of dollars from the state's historic budget surplus. $900 million in total, and toward income and property tax rebates, this year's legislative session went properly well. And with those rebates signed into law by the governor and income rebates heading to homeowners this month, lawmakers passed 2 buckets of rebates, one focused on income taxes and the other focused on property taxes. If you were a full-year Montana resident who paid your estate taxes on 2020 and the 2021 income on time, you should receive a rebate of up to $1,200 for your property taxes, that is. If you meet those requirements, paid less than $1,250, you should have your entire payment refunded. But just weeks after President Biden struck down the canceling student loan debt up to $20,000, the administration announced it would be forgiving more than 800,000 people for a total of $39 billion in relief. And although the Supreme Court concluded that Biden didn't have the power to broadly cancel people's student debt balances at the end of June, his administration used existing regulatory authority to carry out the latest relief. Unlike Biden's sweeping student loan forgiveness plan that would have impacted the majority of borrowers, the latest debt cancellation applies only to those who have been making payments for 20 to 25 years. Those eligible borrowers were most likely enrolled at some point as what's called the Income Contingent Repayment Plan. It was what the first payment plan was available that let borrowers pay what they could afford each month. Other repayment plans have long existed to reach the qualifying 20 to 25-year income base mark that has existed since 2009. Pay-as-you-earn plan launched in 2012 requires 20 years of payments for forgiveness. If you're not sure if you can expect the aid, the U.S. Department of Education said it would alert eligible borrowers within days. It would take up to a month after the borrower is notified for the loan cancellation to occur. And the U.S. Department of Education says that if you qualify for the debt relief but haven't received it by the time student loan bills resume in October, you won't be required to make payments, which is going to help so many people out.
The Senate can work productively on our national defense, in stark contrast to the partisan race to the bottom that we saw over in the House. But the work isn't finished yet. We're going to keep negotiating a path forward, and the Senate will continue working on the NDAA until the job is done. I thank both sides for their efforts. Now, on other Senate business. As we move forward with the NDAA here on the floor, appropriators also continue working in committee. Last week, the Appropriations Committee marked up and approved 3 more bills, and this week they'll hold another markup on Thursday. Just like the NDAA, I am proud to say the appropriations process has been largely bipartisan, precisely as it should be. Finally, with so much going on this week, I want to remind my colleagues that we'll be holding our 3rd All-Senators briefing on AI, following up on our classified briefing earlier this month. I thank all my colleagues for making the time to attend these AI briefings. Today, I also wish to recognize the efforts of the Judiciary Committee, which this afternoon is
prices locally because of refinery or pipeline shutdowns or just blending issues. But big nationwide swings in the price of gas are almost due to the price of crude oil. And new data from the Energy Information Administration shows that the cost of raw crude oil typically represents more than half of the cost of a gallon of gas. Refining and distribution and tax account for the remainder. Over time, the price of crude oil has just significantly increased with supply and demand, many factors affecting both, but recession, crisis, and higher prices tend to tamp down demand. Gas prices in the pump rarely affect the market day conditions. Instead, they represent costs incurred per week, folks. So what does this mean? Because gas prices are smaller, does it mean that we'll become getting stimulus checks anytime soon? Well, here's my answer to that. First of all, drivers in Hawaii, California, Washington, Nevada, and Alaska are seeing the highest gas prices, and food prices have also increased 0.2%. It marked a slowdown relative to the increases that have been seen for most of the year. Compared with a year ago, it was 11.8%. Versus 6.5% overall for all inflation items in the index. In an interview with CNBC, the CEO of Kroger said the company expects grocery inflation to remain relatively high this year, but to ease as the year progresses. A good growing season for farmers around the world will contribute to easing inflation pressures because eggs have been one of the most categories that have seen the most inflation, with prices up 11% in December, and even in November things were high too. So recently the House did pass a bill to seek lower gas prices by cracking down on alleged price gouging by the energy companies. This Consumer Fuel Price Gouging Prevention Act grants the president authority to issue emergency proclamations and make it illegal to increase gas, energy prices in excessive and exploitative ways. Yeah, people are exploiting people for stimulus checks, but that's definitely not cool. Instead, it is very bad and wrong what President Biden has done. Folks, here's what I'm talking about. The Biden administration and Democrats in Texas are the nation's top energy-producing states. They were also aware of this bill. In the days leading up to a bill to support this vote, well, it was unclear whether the bill even has enough support to pass. Moderate Democrats were frustrated with the bill. Democrats in Texas see the nation's top energy-producing state wary of the bill, and they fear legislation could be targeting the industry and pretty much unfairly without proof of actual price gouging. Gas tax holiday, for example, would have removed all taxes on the cost of gas, but the president reconsidered rebate cards, which is another option to provide millions of people relief at the pump. So, I am in support of this, and I do think it's a good idea, but it's definitely not enough because Joe Biden should do more for the people in sending out stimulus payments. If you guys agree, then be sure to subscribe.
The baby. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ann Williams-Isom, and I'm the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services. And the mayor doesn't know this, but this is a very special speech for me and a very special week for me. My oldest